Have you ever believed that you were doing everything right and still felt something was quietly falling apart? Have you ever worked so hard for someone you love, only to realize one day that they were slowly drifting away from you? And have you ever thought that success meant pushing harder, demanding more, expecting better, until someone very close to you finally said, "Stop"? I used to believe I understood what success looked like. To me, it was simple. Success meant discipline. It meant waking up early, planning every hour, and never wasting time. It meant setting goals and reaching them, no matter what. It meant being strong, focused, unbreakable. And as a father, I believe it was my responsibility to teach my son exactly that. My son Daniel was 10 years old at the time. He had quiet eyes, not shy, just thoughtful, the kind of child who would sit by the window and watch the rain for a long time, as if he was listening to something no one else could hear. I used to worry about that, because in my world, people who stopped moving fell behind. People who thought too much lost their chances, and people who didn't push themselves would never succeed. So I decided early on that I would shape him, guide him, prepare him for a world that was not always kind. Every morning, I woke him up at 6, even on weekends, even when the sky was still dark, even when he whispered softly, "5 more minutes, Dad." "No," I would say firmly. "Successful people don't ask for 5 more minutes." He would sit up slowly, rubbing his eyes, not complaining, just quiet. We had a schedule, a strict one. School, extra math practice, English listening, reading, writing, and then review everything again. No wasted time, no distractions, no excuses. At first, I told myself this was love, that this was what a good father did, that one day he would thank me, and sometimes I imagined that future moment so clearly. Daniel, grown up, confident, successful, standing next to me and saying, "Dad, you were right." That image made everything feel worth it. But reality is rarely as simple as the stories we tell ourselves. One evening, I came home later than usual. Work had been exhausting. Meetings, deadlines, problems that never seemed to end. My head was heavy, my patience thin. When I walked into the house, it was unusually quiet. No sound of pages turning. No soft voice reading out loud. No pencil tapping against the table. "Daniel?" I called. No answer. I walked toward his room. The door was slightly open, a small line of light on the floor. I pushed the door gently. He was sitting at his desk, but not studying. In front of him was a blank page. His pencil rested in his hand, but it hadn't moved. For a moment, I just stood there, watching him. "Why aren't you working?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He didn't turn around immediately. He just looked down at the page. "I don't know what to write," he said quietly. "You don't know?" I repeated. "You've been sitting here for how long?" He hesitated. "A while." I felt something rise inside me. Frustration, disappointment, maybe even fear. "How can you not know?" I said, stepping closer. "We practiced this yesterday." I explained everything. "I tried," he said. "I just can't think." That sentence, "I just can't think," it irritated me more than it should have. "Then think harder," I replied quickly. "Do you think life is going to wait for you to feel ready?" He finally turned to look at me, and for the first time that day, I noticed his eyes clearly. They weren't just tired. They were heavy. "I'm tired, Dad," he said softly. Something in his voice was different, but I didn't stop. "We're all tired," I said. "That's not an excuse. If you want to succeed, you have to push through. Silence filled the room. He looked at me for a long moment, as if he was deciding whether to say something or to stay quiet. Then he looked back down and nodded. Okay, just one word. Okay. It should have felt like obedience, like respect, like progress. But somehow, it didn't. I stood there for another second, waiting for him to start writing. His pencil moved, slowly, carefully, but something felt wrong. I didn't have the words for it at the time, so I ignored it. I turned and left the room. That night, I sat alone in the living room. The lights were dim. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I picked up my phone, scrolled through emails, checked tomorrow's schedule, tried to feel productive, tried to feel in control, but my mind kept drifting back to the way Daniel had said, "I'm tired, Dad." Not like a complaint, not like an excuse, but like a truth, a simple, honest truth that I had refused to hear. I leaned back on the couch, closed my eyes for a moment, and suddenly, a question appeared in my mind. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. When was the last time? I asked him how he felt. Not about his homework, not about his results, not about his progress, but about him. I couldn't remember. And that realization felt heavier than I expected because I had been so focused on building his future that I might have been missing his present. The next morning came quickly, as it always did, 6 o'clock, alarm ringing, routine waiting. I walked to his room again, ready to wake him up, ready to continue. But when I opened the door, something stopped me. Daniel was already awake, sitting on his bed, looking out the window. The sky was still pale, soft light just beginning to appear. He didn't notice me at first. He was completely still, just watching. And in that moment, he didn't look like a student or a child who needed to be trained. He looked like someone who was quietly carrying something inside, something I didn't understand yet. "Daniel," I said gently. He turned, a small smile on his face. "Good morning, Dad." His voice was calm, polite, normal, but somehow that made it even harder to read. "Why are you awake so early?" I asked. He shrugged slightly. "I couldn't sleep." I nodded, automatically. "Then it's good," I said. "We can start early today." The words came out of habit, out of routine. But as soon as I said them, I felt it again. That small, quiet discomfort. He paused for a second, just a second, then he nodded. "Okay." Again, that same word. Okay. No argument, no resistance, just acceptance. And for the first time, I began to wonder, was that really a good thing? Or had I been mistaking silence for strength? That day would become a turning point, a moment I would remember for years. But at that time, standing in that quiet room, watching my son agree once again, I still didn't fully understand that the lesson I was trying to teach him was not the one he truly needed. And the lesson he was about to teach me was something I had never learned myself. The day continued, like so many days before it, structured, planned, controlled. Breakfast was quick, simple. No long conversations. Just a quiet rhythm of eating, checking the time, and preparing for what came next. Daniel sat across from me, carefully holding his spoon, looking down at his bowl more than at me. "Finish faster," I said gently. "We don't want to be late." He nodded. "Okay, Dad." Again, that same word. Okay. It was starting to feel different now. Not like agreement, not like understanding, but like distance. After breakfast, we moved into our routine. Books opened, notebook ready, audio lesson prepared. Today we focus on writing, I said. You struggled yesterday, so we fix it today. He sat straight, listening, always listening. I want you to write a short story, I continued. Simple topic. A day I felt proud. I thought it was a good exercise. Clear, direct, meaningful. Take your time, I added, but don't waste it. He picked up his pencil, looked at the page, and stayed still. Again, that stillness, that quiet pause that lasted just a little too long. I watched him from across the table, waiting. A minute passed, then two. Start, I said, my voice calm but firm. I'm thinking, he replied softly. Thinking, that word again. It should have been a good thing. Thinking meant effort. Thinking meant trying, but something about it made me uneasy. 5 minutes passed. The page was still empty. Daniel, I said, this time with less patience, you're doing it again. He looked up, a little confused. Doing what, Dad? Waiting, I said. Overthinking. You don't need the perfect idea. Just start. He hesitated. I don't know what to write about. I leaned forward slightly. Write about anything. A test, a game, a moment. Just write. His fingers tightened around the pencil. I don't remember a day I felt proud, he said quietly. That sentence landed heavier than I expected. What do you mean you don't remember? I asked. You've had many. He shook his head slowly. I don't think so. There was no drama in his voice, no sadness, no anger, just honesty. And somehow, that made it harder to respond. Of course you have, I insisted. You get good grades. You complete your work. You improve every day. He looked at me, really looked at me, and then asked something I wasn't ready for. Are those things supposed to make me feel proud? I paused. The question felt simple, but it wasn't. Yes, I said after a moment. That's exactly what success looks like. He didn't answer right away. He looked down again, at the empty page, then back at me. I don't feel anything, he said. Silence, real silence this time. Not the kind that fills a room gently, but the kind that presses against your chest. I just do them, he continued, because you tell me to. Something inside me shifted, uncomfortably. That's discipline, I said quickly. That's how you become strong. He nodded slowly, as if he understood the words, but not the meaning. Or maybe he understood more than I did. I think, he began, then stopped. Go on, I said. He took a small breath. I think I don't know what I like anymore. The room felt smaller, and the air heavier. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, he looked around the table, at the books, the papers, the schedule written neatly on the side. I just follow the plan. He said it so simply, so clearly. I don't choose anything, he added. There it was. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. And for the first time, I didn't have an immediate answer, because everything he said was true. I had created the plan. I had decided the structure. I had filled his days with purpose, but I had never asked him what he wanted to fill them with. I stood up slowly, walked to the window, looked outside. The world was moving as usual, people walking, cars passing, life continuing. But inside that room, something had paused. Daniel, I said quietly, I still facing the window. Everything I do is for your future. I believe that. I still do. I know, he replied. His voice was soft, not resistant, not angry. I just don't feel like I'm part of it. That sentence cut deeper than anything else he had said. I turned back to look at him. He wasn't crying. He wasn't upset. He was just sitting there, small, calm, and somehow that made it even more powerful. What would you like to do then? I asked, the question feeling unfamiliar in my own mouth. He blinked, as if he hadn't expected it. I don't know, he said. I've never really thought about it. Of course he hadn't. I had been doing the thinking for both of us. The planning, the deciding, the controlling. And now, I was asking him to suddenly know something he had never been allowed to explore. I sat down again, slower this time. The table between us felt different now, not like a workspace, but like a distance. Then let's think about it together, I said. The words felt new, unpracticed. He looked at me carefully, as if trying to understand whether I really meant it. Together? He asked. Yes, I said. A small pause. Then, for the first time that day, he didn't say okay immediately. Instead, he asked another question. Can I not write right now? Simple, direct, and yet, for me, it felt surprisingly difficult. Every part of my pravichka, my habit, wanted to say no, to stay on schedule, to complete the task. But something else, something quieter, told me to stop, to listen. I took a breath. All right, I said slowly. We won't write right now. He blinked again, a little surprised, then something changed in his face. Not a big smile, not excitement, just a small release, like he had been holding something, and finally set it down. What would you like to do instead? I asked. He thought for a moment, real thinking this time, not pressure, not forced. I want to sit outside, he said, and draw. Draw. That word felt distant to me, unproductive, unnecessary, but also harmless. Okay, I said again. This time, the word felt different. We went outside together. The morning air was fresh, cool, quiet. He sat on the small step near the door. I pulled out a notebook and began to draw. No hesitation, no delay. His pencil moved quickly, freely. I stood there for a moment, watching him. This was the same child who couldn't write a single sentence 5 minutes ago. And now, he was completely focused, completely present. What are you drawing? I asked. He didn't look up. The tree, he said, and the light. I followed his gaze. The tree stood in the corner of our yard, sunlight touching its leaves gently. It was ordinary, something I had seen every day, but never really noticed. I looked back at his paper. The lines were simple, but alive, full of attention, full of care. And suddenly, I realized something that made me pause completely. This was effort. This was focus. And this was discipline, just not the kind I had been forcing him into. Do you like drawing? I asked. He nodded slightly. I always did, he said. Always. The word echoed in my mind. Always. And I had never seen it because I had been looking for something else, something louder, something measurable, something I could control. I sat down beside him, quietly, for the first time in a long time. I wasn't teaching him anything. I was just there, watching, learning, and slowly beginning to understand that maybe, just maybe, success was not about pushing harder, but about seeing more clearly. We stayed outside longer than I expected, longer than our usual schedule would ever allow. The sun had risen fully now. The light was warmer, brighter, filling the yard in a way that felt gentle. Daniel was still drawing, completely absorbed, his pencil moving with quiet confidence. There was no hesitation, no stopping, no frustration, just flow. I sat beside him. At first, I told myself I would only stay for a few minutes, just enough to let him relax. Then we would return to the plan. But minutes passed, and something inside me did not want to interrupt. For the first time in a long time, there was no pressure, no clock ticking loudly in my head, no voice telling me we were falling behind. Instead, there was just the sound of pencil on paper and the soft movement of leaves in the wind. "Dad," Daniel said quietly, still looking at his drawing. "Do you ever feel tired, even when you're not doing anything?" The question caught me off guard. "Tired?" I repeated. He nodded slightly. "Like your body is still, but your mind doesn't stop." I looked at him carefully. He wasn't asking casually. He was describing something he knew well. "Yes," I said after a moment. "I feel that sometimes." He nodded again, as if that answer made sense. "I feel it a lot," he said. There was no complaint in his voice, no request for help, just a statement. And somehow, that made it heavier. "When do you feel it?" I asked. He paused, thinking. "Usually at night," he said, "when I try to sleep." I felt a quiet weight settle inside my chest. "What do you think about?" I asked gently. He shrugged a little. "Everything," he said. "School, homework, if I did something wrong." He hesitated, then added softly, "If you're disappointed." The words were simple, but they landed deeply because they revealed something I had not fully seen before. He wasn't just trying to succeed, he was trying not to fail, in my eyes. "I don't want you to feel that way," I said quickly. He looked at me, not confused, not surprised, just calm. "But I do," he replied. There was no argument in his tone, no blame, just truth. And for the first time, I didn't try to correct it. I didn't explain. I didn't justify, because something inside me knew. He wasn't wrong. I leaned back slightly, looking up at the sky, clear, open. So different from the tight structure I had built inside our home. "When I was your age," I began slowly, "I thought the same way." He turned his head slightly, listening. "My father believed in discipline too," I continued, "very strongly." I could see it clearly now, memories I hadn't visited in years. Waking up early, strict rules, high expectations, no room for mistakes. "No matter what I did, it never felt like enough," I said. The words came out more easily than I expected. I thought if I worked harder, if I became better, then maybe one day, he would be proud. Daniel was very still now, listening carefully. "Did he say it?" he asked. I smiled slightly, a small, quiet smile. "No," I said. The answer felt lighter now than it used to. But I kept trying anyway." There was a pause. "And did it work?" Daniel asked. That question was harder. I thought about it for a long moment, about my career, my achievements, the life I had built. "Yes," I said slowly. "I became successful." Then I added, "But I was still tired." Silence again, but this time, it felt different, not heavy, just real. Daniel looked down at his drawing again. "And you don't want me to feel like that?" he asked. I didn't hesitate this time. "No," I said. He nodded slightly. "Then why do we do the same things?" he asked. The question was gentle, but it carried weight, because the answer was not simple. I thought, I began, then stopped, because what I thought no longer felt as certain as it used to. "I thought I was helping you," I said finally. He looked at me, softly. "I think you are," he said. That surprised me. "You do?" I asked. He nodded. "You teach me a lot of things," he said. "How to work hard, how to be responsible." He paused, then added quietly, "But I think I also need to learn how to feel happy." That sentence stayed in the air between us, simple, clear, and completely undeniable. I looked at him, really looked at him, not as a student, not as a project, but as a person, a young person, trying to understand the world and himself. And suddenly, I realized something that felt both obvious and overwhelming. I had been teaching him how to succeed in life, but not how to live it. Daniel, I said quietly, what makes you feel happy? He didn't answer right away. Not because he didn't want to, but because he needed time to think. Real time. Not pressured, not rushed. I like drawing, he said finally, and being outside. He glanced at the tree again. And when things are quiet, quiet, that word again. It seemed so small, so simple, but it held something important, something I had been overlooking. Do you feel happy right now? I asked. He nodded. Yes, and no hesitation, no doubt, just yes. And for a moment, I didn't say anything because I was too busy noticing something else. I felt calm, not productive, not efficient, but calm. And it had been a long time since I had allowed myself to feel that without guilt. Can we stay here a little longer? Daniel asked. I smiled slightly. Yes, I said. This time, the answer felt natural, not like a decision, but like a choice. We sat there together, not speaking much, just sharing the same space, the same moment. And slowly, something inside me began to shift, not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, like a door opening that I hadn't even realized was closed. For years, I had believed that being a good father meant preparing my child for the future, making him strong, making him capable, making him ready. But now, sitting beside him in the morning light, I began to understand something different. Maybe being a good father also meant seeing who he already was, not just who he could become. And maybe failure was not about falling behind or making mistakes or not meeting expectations. Maybe failure was missing the person right in front of you because you were too focused on the person you wanted them to be. I looked at Daniel again, still drawing, still peaceful, and for the first time, I asked myself a question that I had never considered before. Not, how can I make him better? But, who is he? When I stopped trying to change him, the answer was quietly unfolding right beside me. The rest of that morning did not follow the plan, and for the first time, I did not try to fix it. We stayed outside until the sun climbed higher, until the air grew warmer, until the world felt fully awake. Daniel finished his drawing slowly and carefully adding small details, lines that I might have never noticed, but that clearly mattered to him. When he was done, he held the notebook for a moment, not showing it immediately, just looking at it himself, as if he was deciding something. Then he turned to me. Do you want to see? He asked. I nodded. He handed me the notebook. I looked down. It was the same tree, the same light, the same quiet corner of our yard. But it didn't feel ordinary anymore. The way he had drawn the light made it look alive, soft, moving, almost like it was breathing. And the tree was not just a tree. It had shape, presence. It felt seen. This is really good, I said. He didn't smile widely, didn't react strongly, but I noticed something small. His shoulders relaxed. Just a little. Thank you, he said quietly, not proud, not excited, but lighter. And suddenly, I understood something I had been missing for a long time. That feeling, right there, that quiet release, was something he had rarely experienced in our daily routine because I had been so focused on improvement that I had forgotten to notice completion, so focused on what was next that I had overlooked what already was. Tell me about it, I said. He looked at the drawing again. It's the morning, he said, when everything is still. He pointed to the light. I like this part, he added, because it doesn't stay long. I followed his finger, the light touching the leaves, soft, temporary. You mean it changes? I asked. He nodded. Yes, he said. So I try to look at it before it goes away. That sentence stayed with me because it was about more than the light. It was about attention, about presence, about noticing something before it disappears. And suddenly, I felt a quiet discomfort again. Because how many moments had I missed? How many small things had passed by unnoticed? Because I was too busy thinking about the next task, the next goal, the next step? Dad, Daniel said gently, pulling me back to the moment. What are we doing next? The question was simple, but this time, it felt different. Not automatic, not routine. It felt open. I looked at him, then at the notebook, then at the house behind us. The schedule was still there, waiting. Everything we had planned was still possible. We can go back inside, continue the lessons, catch up on what we had missed. We could return to the system that I had trusted for so long, but something inside me hesitated, not out of fear, but out of awareness, because now I could see something I hadn't seen before: the cost. Daniel, I said slowly, what do you think we should do next? He blinked, surprised again, not because the question was difficult, but because it was unfamiliar. I don't know, he said. We usually follow the plan. I smiled slightly. I know, I said. Then I added, but maybe today we try something different. He watched me carefully, trying to understand. Like what? He asked. I thought for a moment. Not planning, not structuring, just thinking. Let's take a walk, I said. A walk? He repeated. Yes, I said. No lesson, no goal, just a walk. He looked at me for a few seconds, then asked quietly, Is that okay? That question revealed everything. All the rules, all the expectations, all the invisible limits that I had created for him. Yes, I said gently. It's okay. We left the house a few minutes later. No books, no schedule. Just the two of us, walking down a familiar street in a completely unfamiliar way. At first, it felt strange, like we were doing something wrong, like we were wasting time. That old voice still existed inside me, still reminding me of productivity, of efficiency. But with each step, it grew quieter. The world around us was simple, people passing by, a dog barking in the distance, the sound of leaves moving in the wind, things that had always been there, but that I had rarely paid attention to. Daniel walked beside me, not rushing, not distracted, just present. Dad, he said after a while, can I ask you something? Of course, I replied. Were you happy when you were a kid? He asked. The question came unexpectedly, and it stayed there, waiting. I thought about it, really thought. Images came back slowly, moments from my childhood, some clear, some faded. I think, I began, then paused, because the honest answer was not simple. I think I had happy moments, I said, but I was also worried a lot. He nodded. Like me? He asked. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't try to soften the truth. Yes, I said quietly, like you. We walked in silence for a few steps. Then he spoke again. I don't want to feel like that all the time, he said. His voice was calm, not emotional, not dramatic, just certain. And in that moment, I realized something important. He wasn't asking me to remove effort from his life. He wasn't asking for an easy path. He was asking for balance, for space, for the ability to feel something other than pressure. I understand, I said, and this time, I truly meant it. We continued walking, slower now, and with each step, a new understanding was forming inside me, not as a sudden realization, but as a gradual shift, like something rearranging itself quietly until it finally made sense. Success was not just about moving forward, it was also about knowing when to pause. Failure was not just about falling behind, it was also about losing connection with what truly matters. And being a father was not just about guiding, but about listening, not just about teaching, but about learning. When we returned home, the schedule was still there, unchanged. But I was not. I looked at the list of tasks, the structured plan, and for the first time, I didn't feel controlled by it. I felt free to change it. Daniel, I said, let's adjust our plan. He looked at me, curious. Adjust? He asked. Yes, I said. We'll still study. We'll still work hard. I paused, then added, but we'll also make space for things that matter to you. He didn't respond immediately, but I saw it again. That small shift in his shoulders, that quiet release, that moment when something heavy becomes lighter. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. This was not the end of discipline. It was the beginning of balance. And maybe, just maybe, that was the lesson I had needed all along. The changes did not happen all at once. There was no sudden transformation, no perfect system, no clear moment where everything became easy. Instead, it began with small adjustments, all quiet decisions, simple shifts. The next morning, I still woke up early. The habit was strong. Years of routine don't disappear overnight. But this time, I didn't go straight to Daniel's room. I sat alone in the living room for a few minutes, listening to the silence, not planning, not checking my phone, just sitting. It felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, but also necessary. When I finally walked to his door, I paused before opening it. A small pause, but it mattered. When I entered, Daniel was still asleep, curled under his blanket, breathing slowly, peacefully. For a moment, I almost woke him up immediately. 6 o'clock. The schedule, the plan, all the old reasons were still there, but something inside me chose differently. I stepped back quietly, closed the door softly, and let him sleep. It was a small decision, but it felt important. Later that morning, when he woke up, he walked into the kitchen with slightly messy hair, still a little sleepy. Sorry, Dad, he said. I woke up late. His voice carried a hint of worry, a habit he had learned. I shook my head gently. It's okay, I said. He paused. Really? He asked. Yes, I said. We can adjust. Adjust. That word again. It was becoming part of our life now, not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign of awareness. Breakfast felt different that day. We sat a little longer, talked a little more. Not about tasks, not about performance, just simple things. The weather, a dream he had, a bird he saw outside the window. Things that would have once felt like distractions now felt like connection. Our study time changed too. We still worked, still practiced, still learned, but not in the same rigid way. Some days we followed a plan. Some days we changed it. Some moments were focused, some were quiet, and slowly. I began to notice something remarkable. Daniel was not falling behind. He was growing, not just in skill, but in confidence, in presence, in something deeper that I had not known how to measure before. One afternoon, about 2 weeks later, I found him at the table again, writing. The same place where he had once stared at a blank page now held something different: movement, flow, words. I didn't interrupt. I just stood there quietly, watching. His pencil moved steadily, not fast, not rushed, but certain. When he finished, he looked up, noticing me. "Hi, Dad," he said. "Hi," I replied softly. "What are you writing?" I asked. He turned the notebook toward me. "A story," he said. I sat down beside him and began to read. It wasn't perfect. The grammar had small mistakes. The sentences were simple, but the feeling was real. It was about a boy who sat under a tree, watching the light move through the leaves. A boy who didn't always understand the world, but who was learning how to see it. I finished reading slowly, carefully. Then I looked at him. "This is beautiful," I said. This time, he smiled. Not a small hidden smile, but a real one, open, clear. "Thank you," he said. And I knew this moment was different from before, because this time, he didn't say thank you out of habit. He said it because he felt it. "Do you feel proud of this?" I asked gently. He thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes," he said. That word meant more than any achievement I had once imagined for him, because it came from him, not from me, not from expectation, but from within. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. Pride cannot be given. It cannot be forced. It has to be discovered. Over time, our days found a new rhythm, not perfect, not always balanced, but real. Some days were still difficult. Some days I slipped back into old habits, rushing, pushing, expecting too much. But now, I noticed it, and more importantly, I corrected it. Not perfectly, but honestly. And Daniel, he changed too. Not into someone completely different, but into someone more himself. He still worked hard, still learned, still improved. But he also laughed more, asked more questions, shared more thoughts, and sometimes he simply sat quietly, watching the world in his own way. And now, I sat with him, not to guide, not to correct, but to understand. One evening, as the day was ending, we sat together in the yard again, the same place where everything had started to shift. The light was softer now, golden, fading slowly. "Dad," Daniel said, "can I tell you something?" "Of course," I replied. "I think I understand something now," he said. I turned to him. "What is it?" I asked. He looked at the tree, at the light moving gently across its leaves. "I think failure is not when you do something wrong," he said. I stayed quiet, listening. "I think it's when you stop feeling anything," he continued, "when you just do things. Because you have to." I felt something deep inside me respond to his words. "And success?" I asked softly. He smiled slightly. "I think success is when you feel something. Even if it's small." He looked at me. "Like when I finished my drawing," he said. "Or when I wrote my story." I nodded slowly, because what he was saying was something I had spent years trying to understand. And somehow, he had found it in a much simpler way. "I think you're right," I said. We sat there quietly for a while, the light fading, the day ending, and in that silence, there was no pressure, no expectation, just presence. Before we went inside, Daniel turned to me again. "Dad," he said. "Yes? Are you proud of me?" he asked. The question was gentle, but this time, it felt different. Not heavy, not filled with fear, just open. I looked at him, and for the first time, I answered without hesitation. Yes, I said, I'm proud of you. Then I added softly, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. He didn't say anything, but his eyes, they said enough. And as we walked back into the house together, I realized something that would stay with me for the rest of my life. I had spent years trying to teach my son how to succeed, only to discover that he was the one teaching me what success truly means. Thank you for listening to this story. If this moment made you pause, even for a second, then maybe it gave you something valuable. And if you want to continue learning English in a calm, meaningful way through stories that stay with you, remember to subscribe and spend a little more time with stories that help you not only learn a language, but also understand life a little more deeply.